Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Mem Vav Amud Beis at the new Mishnah, 12 lines from the bottom. Says the Mishnah, Noisnin Tavshil L'Toich Habor B'Shil Shei Shomor. A person is permitted to take a cooked item and place it inside of a bor on Shabbos. Here we're talking about a situation where it's very hot outside. He doesn't want his cooked item to become spoiled, and therefore he wants to put it inside of a bor to keep it cool. He may do so. And he can take good drinking water. At the times, they used to have places where their boros, their be'erim, were not very clean. They couldn't drink from those waters, and therefore they would then go ahead and take water from, let's say, the river, other places, and it was warm water. So they would take that water and then they would put it inside, let's say, sort of a canister, and then lower it down into their own wells, even though their wells were not drinking water, but it would keep it cool. So that's permissible on Shabbos. One can place cold water in the hot sun so that it heats up on Shabbos. The Mishnah now changes gears and speaks about another subject of Hilchos Shabbos. Misha noshru kelev bederech b'mayim mahalich behen ve'eno choshesh. If a person is traveling and his clothes fell into water, it says over here he can go ahead and walk with those clothing on his person, of course, wearing them, and it's not a concern. When he arrives at the first chotzer, where then is going to be safe and can go ahead and take those clothes off, he can put them in the sun to then become dried out, but he should not do so in front of people. Those are the words of the Mishnah, and the Mishnah needs an explanation. What is the chiddush in these cases, beginning with the first case? Our Mishnah stated that a person can take a tavshil, he doesn't want it to become spoiled, and he can lower it into a bor to keep it cool. Ask the Gemara right away, Pshita, that's straightforward. What would be the malacha that what would be concerned over here on to do on Shabbos? Explains the Gemara, Ma'u the same, you might thought to say, Nigzar mishum ashvuye gumois. You might think to say that it's a gezerah that you might come to then smooth down the ground that is underneath the bor. In other words, when you put your tavshil, let's say it's in some sort of canister or in a pot or something that you want to keep the food in, when you put it on the ground and the ground is not even, you might smooth down the ground, make it even. And therefore, if it's in a field, it's going to be a lach of charesh. If it's in a house, then it's going to be a lach of boine. Kamash malan, it's mutter. We're not concerned about such a gezerah. Then the next din in the Mishnah, ves hamayim hayafim beroim. You can take good drinking water, and we said it's in a canister. You can lower it down and keep it cool inside of water that's not drinkable. Ask the Gemara again, Pshita, what would be the problem with doing that? Answers the Gemara, Seifa istrichle en hachenami. We don't need it for itself. The chiddush in the case is for the next case of the Mishnah. But there's no chiddush in this case at all. It's taught for the next case. Vesatzoinin bechama. Then a person can take cold water and he can put it in the hot sun and let it bake in the hot sun. Ask the Gemara, Hanami Pshita, to take cold water and let it bake in the hot sun. What's the problem with that? The malacha of cooking is only with eish or with the tolda of eish, a derivative of fire. But the sun, there's no problem to put something in the sun. Mao de say ma. You might think to say nigzar dilma asilat mune beremetz. You might think to say that you would then take that which is something that you want to heat up, and you can bury it inside of coals, inside of ashes, to heat it up. Kamash malan, we're not so concerned about such a gezerah. You can take your cold water and heat it in the sun without being concerned about such a gezerah. The Gemara now brings the Mishnah, the latter part of our Mishnah discusses kibus, which is discussing laundering, which is a tolda of libun. Says the Gemara, Quoting the Mishnah, meaning nashru, if a person's begadim became soaked. Om Rav Yehuda Rav kol makom she'osu chachamim bnei maris ha'ayin afilu bechadrei chadorim osur. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav the following statement: when it comes to maris ayin, that we're concerned that people may then think that you're doing something that's osur to be done on Shabbos, that is only in the public eye, he says. But not only in the public eye, rather, but that's even in a private area. If a person is then doing something that could be construed as being usher to do, he cannot even do that in his private quarters. Tanan asked the Gemara from our Mishnah, it says over here in our Mishnah that a person can take his garments off when he gets to the first chutzner, the entrance to a place where he can go ahead and take off his garments and dry them. It's a safe place, but he should not do so in front of the public eye. So here we see that the problem of maris ayin is not in the private chadrei chadorim. It's only in the public eye. Answers the Gemara Tanoi. It's a machlokes Tanaim whether maris ayin extends to even chadrei chadorim. The Tanya says in the Mishnah, in the Brisa, Shoitchan bechamo avalo keneged ha'am. You may take off those garments and let them dry in the sun, but not, like our Mishnah says, in front of the people. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon, Oysin. The Brisa now records the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon, who say it's osir because of chadrei chadorim. Maris ha'ayin is even osir in chadrei chadorim. Omar Rav Huna makes the following statement on top of Kuf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, Hamenaer Talisoy B'Shabbos Chayiv Chatos. If a person, he were to menayer his talis, his beged, on Shabbos, it's Chayiv Chatos. Let's say he has a beged that is little bit, has some dust on it, and he wants to then shake out the beged so that the dust comes off. He says he's chayiv chatos. That's going to be a malacha of libun, of kibus on Shabbos. However, we're talking about only a new garment. That means a garment that still looks fresh. But if it's an older garment, then there's no problem to shake it out from its dust. And we're only talking about a black garment. But if it's white or if it's red, no problem. You can shake it out. And this is saying that it's a problem if he's makbi. So it has three different tnoim in order to then make it osir to shake out the garment that has dust on it. One, it has to be new. We define new as being something that looks still fresh. Number two, it has to be a black garment, whereby the dust is most apparent. And number three, you have to be makbid. When you have all of those three things in place, then by shaking out such a garment, it'll be an isser of kibus on Shabbos. Ula ikloi lepumbedisa. The Gemara tells us that Ula, he visited the city of Pumbedisa in Bavel. Chaza Rabbanan the Kamenafze Glimayu. He saw the Rabbanan, they were shaking out their black garments. Omar, he said, Kimachalin Rabbanan Shabbato. He said, the Rabbanan are being Mechalo Shabbos. Omar Lohu, Rav Yehuda said to them, Nefutzi leba'ape. Go ahead and shake out the garments in front of him, in front of Ula. Because Anan lo kabdina midi. Because we are not makbid, and therefore it's mutter to shake them out. Says the Gemara weiter, Abaye havekoi kamei de Rav Yosef. Abaye was standing before Rav Yosef, his Rebbe. Omar lei, Rav Yosef says to Abaye, his Talmid, Havli kumtoi. Give me my hat. Chaza di ika tala alei. Abaye noticed that there was some dew on the hat of Rav Yosef. Havekemechasem lemeisva lei. Thereby he held back from giving over the hat to Rav Yosef, seemingly because he was concerned that if indeed he's makbid, then there'll be a problem of shaking it out, and he can't give him a hat that has dew on it. It wouldn't be respectful. Omar lei, Rav Yosef says that Abaye nafut shdei, shake it out and let the dew fall off. Anan lo kabdina midi, we are not makbid. Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef Rav Yochanan. Hayotze betalis mekupeles munachas lo al kseifoy b'Shabbos chayev chatos. Here the Gemara is talking about the Inyan of Hotzah on Shabbos. Rabbi Yochanan states over here that one who goes out with a talis mekupeles, typically it's like our talis, the way that we have a talis, a four-cornered garment, and a person would then take the back part of it and fold it so that it's now on his shoulders. Presumably he doesn't want it to get dirty. So when he walks with such a garment on Shabbos, let's say from the Shus HaYachid to the Shus HaRabim, it will be chayev chatas for a malach of hoitzah. Tani nami hochi, we also have a brayso that supports this statement. Soichrek sus hayotzrim mitalisois bekupolos umunachas al kseifim b'Shabbos chayev chatos. Here the brayso says exactly this, that if a person, the soichrin, the sellers, who didn't want the garments that they are selling to then get dirty and sullied, they would then fold the bottom part on top so that it would then be laying on their shoulders. If a person would go out with such a garment, it would be like a masui, and therefore be chayev chatos for hotzah. They weren't only talking about those who sell garments. Ella kol adam, ella shedarkan shel mochrin lotzes kach. Really, it's true with anybody. It's considered to be a masui. People do not normally wear their begadim in that way, and therefore it's not bottle to the goof, and it's a malach of hoitzah. And it's not only true by the moichrim, by the soichrim, only that was a typical situation because they didn't want their garments to get sullied when they sell them, where they would then fold them and put them on their shoulders. The Brayta goes on to say, "V'chenvoni hayotzi b'mois hatzrurin loy b'sadino chayiv chatos." The storekeepers that would have coins that were wrapped in their garments, in their sadin, would be chayiv chatos when they would go out with them. Even though it's not a typical way of carrying coins, either a person does so in his hands or he does so in his money pouch. So here he has it tied inside of his garments. Still, it's considered to be a masu, and he's going chayev chatos for carrying, making hoitzah. V'lo chenvoni bilvad amru ela kol adam. It's not only talking about a chenvani, it's talking about everybody, but this is the typical way that a chenvani will sometimes carry his coins. The Brayta goes on to say, "V'haratonim yoitzim besudon shal kseifon." The ratonim, referring to the messengers who were in a hurry to deliver the messages, they would go out with sudorin on their shoulders. V'lo ratonin bilvad amru ela kol adam ela shedarkin shiraton latzes bekach. And this was considered to be something that was mutter because this is a typical way that people would go out with, and therefore it wasn't just the ratoni, only this is the way that they would normally go out, but everybody else also would go out in such a way, and therefore it would be mutter to then go out with such a sudar in this fashion. Omer Rabbi Yehuda Maise behurkanus b'noisha Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus. There was a Maise with the son of Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus, whose name was Hurkanus, named after his grandfather. Sheyotze besudash al kseifoy b'Shabbos. Ela shenima krucho loy be'etzboy. He went out with a sudar that was on his shoulders, and it had a string at the end that was tied to his finger. Apparently he was concerned that if it would blow off, it would fall off in the, let's say, Rishus HaRabim, he's liable to pick it up and carry Dalet Amos in Rishus HaRabim. When this matter came before the sages, they said, this would be mutter even if there is not a string that's tied to one's finger. One can go out with it and he's not concerned that it will then fall off and he'll carry a Dalet Amos in Rishus HaRabim. Says the Gemara weiter, Dorosh Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda Mishmei Rav Chizda. The son of Rav Chizda, Rav Nachman, made the following drush in the name of his father Rav Chizda. Halacha afal pisha ein nima krucha loy be'etzba oisov. The halacha indeed he paskins like this, that the Chacham had said one can go out with this sudar even though he doesn't have a string that is tied to the finger. Ula ikloi lebei Asi Barhini. Ula visited the household of Asi Barhini. Bo minei. They asked Ula, what's the din? La'asos marzev b'Shabbos. Can you make a marzev b'Shabbos? The Gemara will identify what we're referring to here, but certainly not talking about the marzev that we had on Kuf Mem Vav and Beis just before. That was talking about a gutter that was used, we said, to go into a chavis, to provide the yayin to go out from by taking a reed, a hollowed reed, or a tube. Here we're talking about something else that has to do with garments. Well, Gemara will explain. Omar Luhu. He said back to them, Hochi Omar Rabbi Eloi, I have a Mesara from Rabbi Eloi. Osir Lasa is Marzev b'Shabbos. You cannot make Marzev on Shabbos. My Marzev. So Gemara, what is this Marzev that is also to make on Shabbos and that they were asking about? Omar Rabbi Zeira, Kisei Bavlo Yosa. We're talking about the Kisei of mean the pockets of those Babylonians, meaning to say that they used to have garments that would hang low, and they wanted to then fold them and make these folds and pocket-like folds, so that they would be like ruffles, and they would do that in a way so that it would stay permanently. That would be also to be done on Shabbos. It would be a tikkun kli, a malach of makeh bepatish. Rabbi Yirmiyahu Yosef Kamei Rabbi Zeiro Amarle Hochi Mai. He came from Rabbi Zeiro and he wanted to know what was considered to be aser or not. So he did such a fold in front of him, and he asked Rabbi Yirmiyahu, "Is this aser?" Amarle aser. It is indeed aser. V'hochi Mai. And if we do the fold like this, is it aser? Amarle aser. Indeed, it is also aser. Amar Papa said, "Nakut hai klala biyadcha." Take the following principle in your hand. Also, anytime that you're coming to gather in the garment and make folds and ruffles that's going to be permanent, that's going to be osir. No, sorry. If you're only doing it on a temporary basis, just for when you wear it, you just pick it up in a way that's going to be more beautifying the garment, then that's mutter. Rav Shisha bar Rav Idi, he went out with such a garment and he did it for beautification purposes. In other words, it was such a thing where a person would misatef the garment on the garment by wrapping it on himself. And since he would do that during the week, every time he would put it on, he would just then pick it up and make a fold. We see that as something that's temporary, that's done on a daily basis. So therefore, you can do it on Shabbos as well. Ki also Rav Dimi Omar, he said, Pam achaz yotze Rabbi lesode. One time he makes the following, tells over the following, that Rabbi went out to the field. Here, unlike what we said before of the talis mekupeles, we said that the talis was folded, the back of it was folded and placed on the shoulders. Here we're talking about the way we typically wear a talis, where you have the talis and on each side you have the right side and the left side. The right side was folded onto the right shoulder, the left side was folded onto the left shoulder. So Rabbi did this indeed, and this was not the typical way that they would go out with garments, with such a talis on Shabbos. They would not normally wear it in this way. They would not normally go ahead and walk with such a garment. So on Shabbos, it was considered to be unusual. Omar lefon of Yoshua ben Ziruz ben Chamiv, Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yoshua ben Zoriz, the son of the father-in-law of Rabbi Meir, said the following: Bezulo chayv Rabbi Meir chatas. Wouldn't Rabbi Meir say that this is chayv chatas because you're carrying it like a masui? It's not a malbush, and therefore it's not bottle to the goof. It's an iser derais of hoitzah. Or marlei. So Rabbi says back to him, diktek Rabbi Meir adkan. Was Rabbi Meir so medaktek to this extent that would be chayv chatas? Shilshe Rabbi la talisoi. Rabbi then was submissive, and he indeed lowered his garment so that it would not be then on each side of the shoulder, which is more a typical way that people would wear their garments in when they would travel and walk around. Kiyosa Ravin, when Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael to Bovel, Omar, he said, Lo Yoshua ben Zirus Hava. This story was not in the name of Yoshua ben Zirus, as you had said it. Ella Yoshua ben Kifusoi Haya. It was indeed somebody else who was the chasna of Rabbi Akiva. Omar, he was the son-in-law of Rabbi Akiva, and he said, "Bezulo chayiv Rabbi Akiva chatos." Would Rabbi Akiva not mechayiv chatos? On that he said, "Omar loy." So Rabbi said back to him, "Rabbi Akiva adkan." Would Rabbi Akiva say he would be machmer to this extent and say this would be osir, even chayiv chatos. Shilshol Rebbe talisa. Rebbe then lowered his talis so that would not be a problem of a masui on Shabbos. Ki also Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda. When Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda came, Omar, he said, Nishal, this was a shayla that was asked of Rebbe. It didn't take place with Rebbe himself, but rather a shayla was asked to Rebbe if this would be problematic to go out with on Shabbos. Itmar. And therefore this was what was stated, this is how it was done, and Rebbe was asked such a shayla, can a person fold the right side onto his right shoulder, the left side on the left shoulder, and go out with this on Shabbos or not?